Welcome to a very thrilling Ita story, where OP drops an atomic bomb of divorce on his unfaithful wife on the day of his daughter's graduation. Let's dive in to see what happened next. The story is from Willing Acts. Ita for telling my cheating wife a day before our daughter's graduation that I would be divorcing her. My wife and I have been married for 20 years, and we have a daughter who's 18. She graduated high school a few months ago. Around 6 years ago, I found out that my wife was cheating on me and having an affair which lasted for a couple of months. I really wanted to divorce, but my wife was really remorseful. She quit her job, she started going to therapy, she promised all reconciliation steps I asked for. Ultimately, I did decide to stay with my wife, for her sake and for our family's sake too. For around 5 years, everything was actually going great, and we had date nights, romantic vacations, and we really loved each other. However, on the 6th year, the whole thing resurfaced back on my mind, and I just couldn't get my mind off it. I finally made my decision after a particular line from my sister struck a chord with me. She said, "Would you really want use the gift of life and spend it with someone who had betrayed you so badly?" She told me this a couple of days before my daughter's graduation, and that's when I finally decided I couldn't do it anymore. A day before my daughter's graduation, I informed my wife of my decision and told her that I would be filing for divorce soon. My wife was shocked, and she cried a lot and told me she would do anything, but I told her that my decision was final. My daughter's graduation in itself was great, and I was really proud of my daughter, and my wife seemed happy too. But my daughter could sense something was wrong and asked me why her mom seemed down and trying to fake a smile. I told her not to worry about it and to just enjoy the day. The next day, however, I told my daughter I would be filing for divorce, and my daughter seemed shocked. She said how I could do this to her mom before graduation, and that's why her mom couldn't enjoy the graduation. I told her it's none of her business, but we'll both always love her regardless. My wife and I are now going through divorce proceedings. Ida? OP is not an AH here. His wife is an AH for having a secret affair despite 20 years of marriage. His daughter is also an AH for blaming him for ruining her day instead of understanding his situation. Both OP wife and daughter are selfish and AHs, so I would rate them, respectively, 3.5 and 1.5 out of 5 on the AH scale, and OP gets a 0. It is the time to move on to the next, which is from Tadash Mom Sister 343242. My mom feels my sister should have married my husband instead of me. Aita? I am upset at my mom and my sister because of something my mother said, but everyone around me feels I am overreacting. Please be brutally honest in telling me if I am being insecure, or if my mom and my husband are wrong in this. Let me give you a bit of backstory. My husband James, 34M, and I, 29F, were neighbors growing up. My sister, Fran, 34F, was in the same grade as my husband growing up. Everyone knew my sister in school because she is very smart and beautiful. James had a huge crush on her, and all of us knew about it. He asked her out for senior prom, and Fran shot him down in front of the whole school. They still remained friends, but he moved to a different state for college, and we did not hear much from him, except see him when he came back for holidays. James and I were never friends growing up, since I was in middle school when this happened. In fact, I was much younger than both of them, and they would actively avoid me or involving me in their hangouts and activities. I went to a good college and got my first job in the same city as James. My mom suggested I should contact James, since I did not know anyone there. We became friends, and 3 years later, we got married. We both have high-paying jobs and love our life. We moved back to our hometown during COVID as James's mom had health issues, and our jobs allowed us to work remotely. Fran also had a pretty good life. She married when she was 23 and her husband was pretty well off. 2 years ago, Fran discovered that he was cheating on her for almost the entire duration of their marriage with multiple partners, and she decided to break things off. Fran moved back with my mom. Fran had not worked for the entire duration of their marriage and was expecting to gain significant alimony from the divorce. However, due to complications regarding prenup, she barely got anything and is struggling financially. She got a job, but is barely able to afford her own place and continues living with my mom. James and I were very supportive of her during the whole process. Since James and Fran were friends growing up, They both have a special bond. They have their inside jokes and stories, and I sometimes feel like a third wheel when we all meet. However, James keeps his distance and has never given me any reason to believe that he has lingering feelings for her. Fran, on the other hand, constantly visits us, like 2-3 times a week, and ends up staying for dinner and sleeping in our guest room. I don't mind her coming over, but I do not like the fact that she talks more to James than with me. Also, she always comes over when I am not at home, and I often find them sitting next to each other on sofa and watching TV when I get home. It sort of reminds me of my childhood, where I was locked out of our basement when Fran had friends over, and I would feel left out. Fran is also too comfortable around James, and walks around the house in just a towel after her shower when James is around, or sleep in her underwear in guest room without locking the door. I have voiced my concerns to her, but she says that we are family, and she does not care. I have also voiced my concerns to James, and he does make efforts now to explain stories and inside jokes if Fran makes them. The main issue happened this weekend. I was hanging out with my mom and Fran last weekend, and Fran was recollecting stories about how James would do her homework and do chores for her growing up. She said, "He was so much in love with me, and I felt guilty taking advantage of him." My mom jokingly said to her that I wish you had the wits to marry James than your loser husband, and you would have not been in this situation. Fran smiled after hearing that and nodded, but I was hurt by the comment. I protested to my mom that James is my husband, and I do not want her to make such comments about him. My mom doubled down and said that she feels like it, because both James and I are high earners, while Fran is struggling. So, it would make sense if Fran was married to James, and I would be fine since I do not need James to support me financially. She kept on saying that it was a hypothetical, and just wants both her daughters to be happy. I did not like those comments and told them to not speak like that about James and my marriage in general. Fran chimed in and told me that I should not take the comments so personally, and I am being too sensitive. However, I had a fight with both of them, and I left. When I came home and told James, he also sided with my mom and Fran, and told me that her mom just made a harmless joke. I also raised the issue of Fran's behavior around our house, and he told me that this is between me and my sister, and he is not going to tell Fran about what she can or cannot wear in our house. However, I am just feeling really bad since the situation, and despite everyone apologizing to me, things just don't feel right. Am I wrong here in reacting the way I did? Or does everyone else have a point? And I should be more secure about my relationship with James. Update. To summarize what happened, my mom made a really off-putting comment that she wished my sister, Fran, was married to my husband, James. I got really mad, and my husband also tried to undermine my feelings and told me I was overreacting to a harmless joke. Sorry for the long post, but a lot of you were messaging me for update and wanted to tell what happened. The comments really made me paranoid, and I did see everyone's point that James may have just married me because of his crush on Fran. This really shot up my anxiety, and I started snooping around. My husband literally makes me check his phone for new messages when he is not around, so I knew there was nothing to hide there. However, I was spooked by how my sister always knows when I am not at home, and why James and Fran are always sitting on the same couch when I come home. I tried talking to my husband, and he told me that my feelings were valid. However, he also said that Fran is going through a tough time and refused to say anything bad about my mom and Fran. Last Friday, I went to gym as usual in the evening, and when I came home, Fran was sitting in the living room while James was cooking dinner. I got a bit angry and asked her what she is doing here. She said had no plans for the night, and she came to hang out with us. It really annoyed me, and I told her that I wanted to spend a quiet weekend with my husband, and if she can come some other time, she could see I was upset. She started saying how our mom was just being silly, and I need to let it go since it was just a joke. I told her I did not find it funny, and we got into a fight. She said that I am always an insecure, annoying kid, and no wonder no one liked me. It really hurt me, but James stepped in and told Fran that she needs to leave. I have never seen James be so forceful with Fran. Fran muttered some unpleasant things to James and then left. I was in tears by the end of the whole thing, and James was consoling me. I was really upset and spent the night in our room alone. In the morning, I prepared notes on all things I wanted to ask James. Your comments really helped me get my thoughts straight, I know I was being very insecure, but after reading the comments, I really started questioning if James really married me for me, or just because I was Fran's sister and looked like her. People called me Dollar Store Fran in high school. James and I had a long conversation, and I told him my anxieties and insecurities. I told him how it makes me feel that he spends so much time with Fran when she visits us, and they have their own inside jokes. I asked him if he still has feelings for her. He was calm and smiling the whole time. He told me that he will tell me the truth, but does not want me to hate him for it later. He said that he knows Fran used him all through their school days, because she knew he liked her. When he went to college, Fran still tried to keep in touch with him, but putting distance between them made him realize how badly she treated him, and he decided to just cut contact with her so that he can work on himself. That was the reason he rarely visited us when he used to come for holidays, and stopped being friends with Fran. I told him that it bothered me that he chose Fran before me and ignored me during our childhood. That was the reason I always had that doubt if I was his second choice. He said that I was 13 when he went to college, and if he would have liked me instead of Fran at that age, we would be having a different problem. He told me that when I contacted him, he thought that I must be like Fran and was not very enthusiastic to meet me. However, after we hung out for a few times, he realized I am nothing like Fran. We soon became close, started dating, and got married after a few years. He told me that Fran was married by then, and he saw that I always put Fran on the pedestal and would get jealous when Fran posted vacation pictures or the new shiny things her husband bought for her. That was the reason he never told me that he does not like hanging around Fran, as he feels that for me, Fran was always the North Star. He told me that he has always kept his distance from Fran, and she was a non-issue since we would meet her only few times every year. However, after her divorce, he did not know how to act. He said that he was grateful to me for uprooting our lives and moving back to our hometown for his mom's health. He wanted to do the same and take care of my family. When Fran got divorced, he supported her in every way he could for me, even though he realized it meant spending a lot of time with her and listening to her bring up all the memories from high school that he wants to forget. I told him it bothered me that Fran came to our house as often as she does, and generally in evenings when I go to gym. He told me that he also finds it odd that she knows my gym routine and always comes on evenings when I am not at home. However, he told me that he has always kept his distance from her, and if she did anything that would raise an alarm, he would have told me immediately. She just makes him all the old movies or TV shows they watched growing up, and gossips endlessly about their high school friends. He told me I need to trust him, and if I want him to be the bad guy and ask Fran to not visit us often, he can do that for me. However, he knows that I will eventually make up with my mom and Fran and does not want to blame him for being mean to Fran. However, he told me he will not tell Fran what to wear around the house, as it would be creepy if it came from him. I felt I got all the assurance I needed from James, and I will never doubt how amazing of a husband he has been. My mom and Fran visited us on Sunday, and my mom profusely apologized to me. She told me she does not want me to feel bad for her comment, and she would never wish anything bad on my marriage. She meant to say that James was a great guy, and she hopes Fran can find someone like him one day. Fran was a bit sour, but apologized to us for all the name-calling on Friday and told us that it's just her hormones. She said that she likes hanging out with her sister and her best friend, and hence comes to our house. I told her she is welcome to come anytime she wants, but to call ahead of time in case James and I have plans for the evening, and she agreed. I really want to move past this issue, but I do want to put some firm boundaries on when Fran can come to our house and hang out with James alone, as I know it bothers him too. Overall, I feel things are good now. I am glad my worst fears did not come true, but I do feel I need some therapy in order to deal with my insecurities. OP is not an AH in this situation, and her reaction is understandable and justified given the hurtful comment her mom made. OP's mom is pushing the boundaries despite knowing her insecurities around her husband's past crush. OP's reaction is completely valid. Despite all this, OP addressed the situation with maturity by communicating with her husband. So, OP is not an AH, and I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, OP's mom is an AH, and I would rate her 2 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's now move on to the next story from Agency Academic 9208. where OP exposed his husband's affair with his best friend at a family BBQ party. Aita for exposing my husband's affair with his girl best friend at a family BBQ after his father told me to get over it. I, 29F, have been married to my husband, 31M, for 5 years. We've had a good relationship overall, but there's always been one issue. His girl best friend, Megan, 30F. She's been in his life since childhood, and while I've always felt a bit uneasy about their closeness, I trusted my husband and tried to be cool with it. Megan is always around. She's at our house constantly. They text all the time, and she even comes on family vacations with us. Every time I brought up how their friendship made me uncomfortable, my husband would brush it off, saying she's practically a sister, and that I was overreacting. To make matters more complicated, my mother-in-law, 58F, is amazing. She's always had my back and has told me multiple times that if Megan made me uncomfortable, I should talk to my husband about setting boundaries. On the other hand, my father-in-law, 60M, has a very different attitude. He adores Megan and has always said that she's part of the family and that I just need to deal with it. He thinks my discomfort with their friendship is just jealousy. Fast forward to 2 months ago. My husband started acting distant, coming home late, being secretive with his phone, and just off. I had a gut feeling something was wrong, so one night I went through his phone while he was in the shower. That's when I found out that he and Megan had been having an affair for months. I was crushed. I confronted him, and he admitted everything. He swore it was a mistake, said he loved me, and begged me not to leave him. I didn't know what to do, so I stayed quiet for a bit, trying to process everything. A couple of weeks later, my in-laws hosted a big family BBQ. I was still reeling from the affair, but my husband convinced me to come, saying we needed to keep up appearances while we worked things out. I went, but I was a wreck inside, especially knowing Megan would be there. Sure enough, Megan showed up like nothing had happened, acting all friendly with everyone, including me. I was boiling inside, but I kept it together. Then, during dinner, my father-in-law made some offhand comments about how Megan would always be part of the family, and that I needed to get over my insecurities. He said this in front of everyone. That was my breaking point. I stood up, looked straight at him, and said, "You know what? I would get over it if she wasn't sleeping with my husband." The entire table went silent. Megan's face turned white, and my husband tried to calm me down, but I wasn't having it. I told everyone exactly what had been going on, the sneaking around, the lies, and the betrayal. My mother-in-law was furious, but not at me. She laid into my husband and Megan, saying they'd destroyed our marriage and disrespected me. My father-in-law, though, had the audacity to say I was overreacting and that affairs happen. But I shouldn't have aired it out in front of the family. He even defended Megan, saying she made a mistake and we should all move on. I left the BBQ and have been staying with my mom ever since. My husband keeps begging me to come home, and my mother-in-law has been supportive, but my father-in-law is telling the whole family that I'm the one causing drama and blowing things out of proportion. Aida? OP is not an AH for revealing her husband's affair with his childhood friend. The way her husband betrayed her and had a secret affair with his friend is disgusting. Exposing his affair at a barbecue party is justified given the dismissive remarks of her father-in-law and her husband's affair partner's audacity to act normal. You cannot call her natural response to betrayal an overreaction. She is not to be blamed, and she is not an AH. I would rate her 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. On the other hand, both OP's husband and his childhood friend are jerks, and I would rate them each 2.5 out of 5 on the AH scale. Now let's move forward onto another story from Emotional Dash Local 7610. Aita for telling my daughter that the birth of her baby bothers my wife. I, 57M, have been married to my wife Jennifer, 55F, for the last 10 years. I have a 25-year-old daughter, Cassie. Jennifer and Cassie developed a great bond over the years, which was beautiful to watch, as Cassie hadn't had a lot of mothering. Cassie's mother became a hardcore drug addict, and her parental rights had to be terminated completely. Cassie is all grown up now, and they had a beautiful relationship up until 3 months ago. Cassie had a baby boy, and when he was born, we went to the hospital to see him. It was a great day, everyone was happy, and holding the new baby, Jennifer included. When we got home, Jennifer said she needed a shower and went into the bathroom. We have a double shower and I decided I'd join her. I was chatting and adjusting my shower head when I noticed she had her back to me. Instinctively, I knew something was wrong, and I turned her around to see that she had been sobbing. She had been trying to hide it, but when she saw that, I knew she completely broke. Jennifer had a daughter who passed away, who would be the same age as Cassie if she were still alive. She died about a year before we met, under very tragic and traumatic circumstances. I know over the years seeing Cassie reach all her milestones and wondering what could have been for her own daughter has probably been hard, but she almost never shows it. I love my wife so much, and in that moment, the only thing I wanted to do was protect her from any further hurt. After we got out of the shower, I lay with her as she cried herself to sleep. Here comes the part where I messed up. There was going to be a welcome home dinner at Cassie's house for all the family the following weekend. Cassie's husband texted me while Jennifer was sleeping to ask that we bring something, and I told him we might have to sit this one out. That Jennifer is having a hard time with the birth of the baby, and that I wanted to be with her that weekend. But we would make it up to them later. I thought everything was okay. But when Jennifer woke up a few hours later, there was a bunch of text messages from Cassie that were not nice at all. I was shocked. Jennifer has always gone out of her way to show a lot of love to Cassie. Jennifer was devastated and has been trying to talk to Cassie, but she won't speak to her. That was 3 months ago, and we haven't seen the baby since the initial trip to the hospital. Jennifer says she fully intended to go to the dinner, and I had no right to decline on our behalf without talking to her first, and that if she really felt she couldn't have gone, she just would have made up an excuse at the last minute. I really thought that Cassie and her husband, knowing Jennifer's past, would have more empathy for her. That's why I told them the truth, but it seems that was a mistake. Now everybody is hurting. Aita? OP is a little bit an AH here for sharing his wife's private emotions without consulting her. No doubt he wanted to protect her, but he unintentionally caused more harm by not letting his wife handle the situation herself. So I would rate OP 1.5 on the AH scale. It is the time to move on to the next story from Substantial Shape 6835. Aida for not allowing my wife's best friend inside my house after she disrespected me and called me a puppy. Me and my wife got married a year ago. We both are in our early 20s. I love my wife very much. I do everything for her and take care of her, and I know she loves me. I never felt ashamed for doing what my wife asked me to. As her husband, I feel like she's my responsibility and it's my duty to take care of her. But her best friend, BFF, insulted me. Her BFF visits us every few weeks, always did. We aren't close, but we do talk, but not enough to be friends. But me and my wife's BFF got along. 3 weeks ago, she came to spend time with my wife. After talking to my wife, she came to living room, and it was just me and her, and my wife was cooking. We were watching news, and long story short, we started arguing over politics. We went back and forth, but she got angry and we started getting loud. My wife came and saw us arguing. BFF got so angry that she started insulting me. I didn't like that, but I kept it civil. But she started saying I am a simp without a backbone. I always hid behind my wife and listened to her all the time. I am weak and I do not know anything about the real world. And I am basically my wife's puppy who always listened to her, so I should shut up and listen to my wife's command. I was angry, but I just asked her to leave. She said she's sorry for what she said, but I kept asking her to leave. She looked at my wife, and my wife just said, "It's between you guys and deal with it." I demanded she leaves right away, and she left finally. I felt really bad for what she said, so I went to my wife to talk to her and asked her if you think the way she thinks. My wife said, "Ignore what her BFF said. I am not her puppy or anything like that. I am her husband, and she couldn't have found a better husband. And she's glad I am with her. We both spent the night together, and wife said she'll talk to her friend and she will always be my side. But yesterday her BFF visited once again. She said she came to me to apologize. I politely said that I am currently still angry at her, and it's better if we do not escalate. What you said was extremely disrespectful. I love my wife and will always love her. But that doesn't I am a puppy, and for you to consider me, one is disgusting." She said she is extremely sorry for what she said in her anger and didn't mean it. I asked her to leave. My wife simply said, "It's between you both. Deal with it once again." Later, my wife said I should forgive her BFF and I should not think about whatever she said and I am her husband, so no matter whatever decision I make, she will support me and always choose me over everything else. And if I want to, she will ask her BFF to never come to our home. Aita. OP is not the AH. He was justified in setting boundaries after being insulted and disrespected by his wife's friend. Calling him a puppy was demeaning, and while the friend apologized, it's reasonable for OP to need time to process the hurt. So, OP is not an AH, and I would rate him 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. Both OP's wife and her friend are AH, and I would rate them 3 out of 5 on the AH scale. Let's move on to the last story, from Strawberry Pretend 264. Aita for refusing to switch back chores with my wife until she apologized and begged. My wife and I have been married for 5 years after dating for 3. We also lived together for 1 year while we were engaged. When we started living together, we both worked, and we shared all the chores equally. A year after we got married, she got pregnant. Not planned, but an awesome accident. We decided to use our savings to buy a house, and for her to work from home and be a stay-at-home mom. I work out of town, and when I'm home, I take care of all the yard work, and I do a bunch of chores like laundry, cooking, cleaning, grocery shopping, etc. But obviously when I'm gone, she does everything. Because I know it will be asked, my schedule is 42 days of work and 21 days off. The other day, I had taken kids out for the morning to give her a chance to relax. When we got home, the kids were wiped, so I gave them a bath and let them have a nap. I didn't vacuum, so I wouldn't wake them up. I did go around the house tidying. I also made lunch for my wife and me. After lunch, she went to work, and I watched hockey. When the kids got up, I fed them, and we watched hockey together. My wife came out of her office and said it must be nice that I do all the easy chores, and she does everything. I don't know where this was coming from because when I'm home, I pretty much do everything. And my income is about 75% of our household income. We actually ended up fighting about it, and I said that for the next 2 weeks I would trade her chores. I would literally do all the chores completely by myself. In return, she had to do all the yard work. I have a riding mower and a snowblower, so she thinks it's just me driving around. She agreed. She had forgotten that she ordered 2 cords of firewood to be delivered. She also saved money by not getting it stacked in our backyard, but just dumped in our driveway. Normally, I would make a bunch of trips with my wheelbarrow and then stack the wood. I do it quickly so the cars can get out of the garage. When the delivery came, she was busy. When she saw the wood, I was making dinner. She said she needed to go out, so I needed to move the wood. I pointed out that was yard work. She went out and moved some to the backyard, and she moved some out of the way so she could get out of the garage. When she got back, the wood was waiting for her. But the kids were clean and ready for supper. The kitchen was clean, and the laundry was done. She said she wanted to switch back, but I declined since it is rainy out, and I don't want to stack firewood. She did about 1/3 of it before she gave up and came in. She apologized for her attitude and begged me to switch back. I asked her what chores she had to do for me to switch. There was nothing. I did it all already. She started crying, and I said I was just around, and I went and stacked the wood after supper. Her mother called me an AH for making her do hard work. I told her that we traded, but she is still pissed at me. I think my wife understands what I do now, but her mom still thinks I'm wrong. Aita, OP is not an AH here. His mother-in-law is exaggerating the situation by blaming OP for their chores swap agreement. Although this was their mutual agreement and OP's wife apologized for her attitude, OP's mother-in-law's reaction is just too harsh. She is an AH here. So, for the score, I would rate OP's mother-in-law 2.5, his wife 1, and OP 0 out of 5 on the AH scale. What do the Mac Reddit fans think? Is the OP an AH or not? Let me know in the comment section below. If you like the stories I brought you, just hit the like button, share them as much as you can, and don't forget to subscribe to Mac Reddit for a daily dose. Bye bye, see you tomorrow with some more spicy fries.